In like the first chapter, there's a paragraph which is written in the wrong tense, and I really need to go back and fix it. Hi, I'm Claudia, and I've been actively writing fanfiction for 1.5 years now, which is insane for me to think about because it feels like yesterday when I was posting my first ever fanfic and I was terrified. I thought I was going to do something wrong, or I was going to tag it wrong, or something was just going to go wrong and it would never see any light of day and it would just rot in my phone forever. And so yesterday when I posted my 14th work on AO3, I was like, you know what, maybe I should do a video talking about all those things that I thought might happen that didn't and telling people they're not going to happen. Or really what I'm going to do is answer all of those stupid questions that you think, why don't I know this? I should know this if I'm going to post a fanfic. Those stupid questions, I'm here to answer them. I am going to preface this by saying I do not know everything. I don't know the answer to every single question under the sun. However, I do know the answers to some of them. So those are the questions I'm going to be answering here. All those questions I had 18 months ago that I thought were stupid and that if I asked them, people would look at me like I was an idiot. Those are the questions I'm going to answer right here today. Also, I write fanfiction exclusively on AO3. However, some of these tips you could probably relate to other fanfiction websites and apps if you want to. And we're going to start with, even before you think about posting it, before you even think about writing it, what do you do right at the beginning? The first thing you need for a fanfic is an idea. This idea can be literally anything under the sun. But if you're in the position of you love writing, you really want to write fanfiction but you don't have ideas, here is a list of places where I have gotten ideas before. The more normal places I've gotten ideas are things like the actual canon. So if it's a TV show, actual episodes of the TV show. This could be maybe there's a scene you think is missing for an episode and you want to write it. Or it could be something happens in canon that you don't particularly like and you want to change that, whether that be a tiny change or a massive change. It could also be the canon of a different TV show or movie or book or whatever. Like for example, you could be watching a TV show, 2 characters almost die and you think, oh, these other 2 characters from this other show, they could also almost die in that way, and I feel like that'd be a bit of fun. You can write that. One of the most common places to get fanfiction ideas is through song lyrics. I know I've gotten quite a few through song lyrics. And if you're thinking, oh, my music taste is quite niche, I'm not getting any ideas from this, go on TikTok, look up edits of the characters you want to write for, and just pick one of the songs that people commonly use for edits, because I promise you, there's something angsty out there. Now for some of the weirder places I've got fanfiction ideas from. I mean, I've already said you can get ideas from other TV shows, but one of my most niche ones, which is actually the first ever fanfic I wrote on AO3, is based off the Gavin and Stacey finale, which is a very, very niche British thing. But that is not the weirdest fanfic I ever wrote. That goes to a buddy one-shot I wrote relatively recently called Locale's Exchange Principle. It is based off of Locale's Exchange Principle, which is a forensic science concept. Basically, I'm a forensic student, I was writing an essay, I was quoting Locale's Exchange Principle, and I thought, you know what, this could really work for Buddy. And then I ended up writing a one-shot that was longer than the essay I had the idea from. Anyway, what I'm saying is your ideas for fanfiction can come from literally anywhere. So if you're stuck for ideas, just like wait a few days, scroll on TikTok, read some fanfics. Trust me, something will probably come to you. And then when you have those ideas, make sure you write them down. I can't tell you how many times I've had good ideas and then just not written them down and completely forgotten them. Like, I honestly can't tell you how many times because I've forgotten the ideas. Just put them like in the notes on your phone or something. Just like save them somewhere so you don't forget this really good idea you had at 2 a.m. one night, you know? After getting an idea, the next step I would say would be planning. Now, if you're doing a one-shot, you don't necessarily need to plan everything. If you're okay with winging it like I am, you can just go with the idea and start writing. That's what I tend to do with one-shots. However, if you're someone who likes to plan everything out and you're writing a one-shot, or if you're just writing a longer fic, I would highly recommend planning everything. And the degree to which you plan stuff depends on your own personality. But for example, I relatively recently wrote my first like super long fanfic. It's 37 chapters, 120,000 words. I call it in my head my magnum opus, okay? And the base idea of that fic is the 2 characters in the ship, they dated before when they were younger, it didn't work out, they didn't see each other for a long time, and then they kind of re-met when they meet in canon, and it kind of follows on from there, I guess. But what's really important for that fic is even though I'm following canon, there is this whole other relationship they had way back in time that I've completely made up. So in the document that I used to write my fanfic, on the first page, I wrote a timeline of their like first relationship with years they were born, years important things happened, to the month in some cases where it got to like the more dense sections, just so I didn't accidentally end up contradicting myself in 2 different chapters, if you know what I mean. For the actual fic, I didn't actually plan a lot of it, but that's because that's more of my personality. I procrastinate, I don't plan, I kind of just wing things. I mean, even with all that planning, I still did make a few mistakes, but I would highly recommend planning as much as you feel comfortable planning. For me, I kind of like to see where the fanfic takes me, so I didn't plan a lot of the actual fic. I just planned the kind of stuff that I would need to know for their past. You can plan it and be like, this is what's going to happen in each and every single chapter. I think for that long fic, I felt comfortable not planning it as much because I followed canon. It wasn't canon compliant, it was more what I call canon adjacent, so I had changed things, but typically it followed the canon of the show, so I could just watch the next episode and I'll be like, okay, that's my next chapter. Although I didn't do a chapter for every single episode, that was kind of the routine I followed. But that meant when there was a few episodes in a row where nothing was really going on for the two characters for the ship I was writing, I really struggled because I had to just pull something out of thin air. Also, I didn't exactly follow the timeline of the show. I think Christmas was way later than it actually is in the show, but just ignore that. Timelines in TV shows are fluid at best, so if I want to change the timeline, that is my choice as the writer of the fanfic, okay? But once you've done all of that, you've got your idea, you've planned as much as you want to, you actually have to start writing, and this can be one of the hardest things to actually do, because suddenly it's not just in your head anymore, you've got to put it down on paper. And that can be really hard. What I'd recommend is, even if you're not super confident with how you're starting it, just start, just like go, because you can always go back and change it once you've like finished the chapter or done multiple chapters. There have been so many times where I've started a fanfic, got halfway through and completely changed the beginning paragraph because I've realised I don't like it. Like, that's not a problem. You're the writer, you can change what you want, like that's not a problem. And if it's, say you're writing a one shot, you get to the middle and you're like, oh, I don't know what to do, but you have a really, really clear idea of what you want the ending to be, just skip a little bit, write the ending and then come back because you might have more ideas at that point. Same if you're writing a longer fic with multiple chapters. If you're really stuck like halfway through a chapter, just like start the next chapter and then go back because you might end up getting a few more ideas. Or say you're writing a fanfiction ship that's in a TV show, just go watch a few episodes because I'm sure they'll be like say something or make something click in your head and suddenly you have like 4 ideas. When I was writing this long fic I keep talking about, I was really lucky in that all my favourite TV shows, which are all procedurals, they were all kind of still going. They weren't on break or hiatus or anything. I was getting new episodes every week, which meant I was getting new ideas every week because I was writing a fanfic about a procedural and I was watching procedurals, so I was like, hello! But my next tip for like when you're writing, in like a different tab or on another screen, have up a thesaurus website. You can pick whichever one you so desire, but there's going to be times where you think, I've just used this word 3 times in 3 sentences, I need to change it. I really struggle to find other words for the word said or says, depending on what tense you're writing in. So I have like a website up on my phone which has like different words for said split into categories based off what kind of speech you're doing, and that really helped me when I was writing. Like, you might find that you use a different word really commonly, so you have to like find synonyms for that, but for me it's said or says depending on the tense. That's another thing, when you're writing, settle on a tense quick, because for my long fic I ended up writing in the present tense, but when I was writing the first chapter I was still debating between present and past, and then in like the first chapter there's a paragraph which is written in the wrong tense and I really need to go back and fix it. But once you finish writing, it comes time to post. Now for one shots, obviously as soon as you're done writing you're going to be thinking about posting. However, for longer fics with multiple chapters, you can do one of 2 things. If it's a shorter fic with say 5 or maybe 10 chapters, you can probably still post straight away. But if it's a much longer fic, like with me, my long fic is 37 chapters, I waited till I had a backlog of quite a few chapters. I think I had 4 chapters written before I posted chapter 1, just in case I like had no time to write or whatever. I tried to make sure I always had a backlog. That backlog died around chapter 25, and from that point onward I was writing on the day the chapter had to go out. But do as I say, not as I do, okay? Have a backlog, it will save you, I promise. Also, if you're writing a longer fic and you have multiple chapters, you might want to work out a posting schedule. If you're more than happy to just kind of post whenever you finish the next chapter, then that's fine, like you do you. But for me, I liked having a deadline for the next chapter, so I kind of liked having a posting schedule. Although that did mean once I burned through my backlog, I was like very low on time for some chapters. Like sometimes I used to post Wednesdays and Sundays, and the Wednesday chapter would always be the one I had issues with, because like Sunday I've had the weekend to write, but Wednesday I'm at uni all week, so like I'm busy in the day, so I've only had evenings to write. I'd finish the chapter like 10:15 and post it immediately, because I was like, oh my god, thank god I got it finished before the next day. I think there was one time I finished a chapter at like 10:25 and I go to bed at 10:30. And like I live with my parents, I can't just like stay up, they will know and they will tell me, Claudia, go to bed. So I had like 5 minutes to get it posted, and I remember I was on such a time crunch, I was hurrying. That's not the worst time I've had to deal with that. Literally yesterday I was writing a one shot based in the same universe as my long fic, if that makes sense. But I was like, I want to post it exactly a month after I finish the long fic, because I'd taken a break from that universe for like a month just to like reset, because I devoted like 5 months of my life to that long fanfic. But I was like, okay, so I've got to post it on the 13th of June, and then I procrastinated procrastinated writing it. I finished writing the fic at like 10:20, but the thing is I forgot with one-shots you have to fill in more than just like adding a new chapter to a fic, so I didn't end up posting it. I think it was like 11:15 I posted it, and I was so relieved I got it out on time. So yeah, do as I say, not as I do. Have a backlog, get a posting schedule, and stick to it. Don't procrastinate. But anyway, now it's time to post your fanfic. What the hell do you do? The things you kind of need for this are a title and kind of a general idea of how the AO3 tagging system works, or whatever website you're using, how that tagging system works. On AO3, actually posting a fanfic is relatively like self-explanatory. It's like filling in a form for like any kind of thing you've ever done. So you just kind of fill in all the boxes. If you don't understand what box means on AO3, they will have little question marks next to them, so you can like hover over or click on them, I think, on mobile, and it will tell you what each one means. You will have to fill in the tags, which is why I say you have to have a general idea of how the tagging system works, because you need to tag everything. If there's a tag for your fic that you're second guessing putting on it and you're not sure, I would say always go for putting it on it rather than not, because you'd rather have too many than too few. And that's how my brain works. If it's a tag that you think would be common in like the fandom or in the ship, you can always check other fanfics and see if they've tagged it. Like for example, if you've got some violence in your fanfic and you think, oh, there's that other one shot I read which has a very similar level of violence to mine, I'm going to see what they've tagged, and then check like a few other tags and kind of go with like the general consensus. Because if you've got a similar level of violence and they've tagged like canon typical violence, then you will probably also need to tag canon typical violence. And then once you've done the tags, if you're like me, you're probably still also terrified that you've missed a tag somewhere and it's just completely like flew out of your brain. I would say if you're in that situation, just don't worry, because from what I've seen online, if you've just like missed a tag through human error, someone will probably comment being like, hey, just so you know, I think you should have this tag, and that will like trigger it in your brain and be like, oh my god, how did I not tag that? That seems so obvious now. The only time you might not tag something that you know is in your fic is if it's going to be a spoiler. In the long fic that I wrote, Intertwined, that I keep talking about, at the end of chapter 11 there's a big plot twist, and prior to posting that chapter there is nothing about it in the tags. But then when I posted chapter 11, I added it to the tags, and then in the notes at the top I said, look, I've added this to the tags. If you don't want to know, like, stay spoiler free, don't look at the tags, it only comes into play in the very last sentence of the chapter, which was true. But if you do want to know, it's in the tags if you want to check it and then decide if you want to read on or not. That is like your choice. Anyway, you've done your title, you've done your tags. The next thing is the summary. Some people like to choose like an excerpt from the actual fic to be the summary. I've done this multiple times, and then they usually put like a line under it and then it goes, in which bloody 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 blah bloody bloody blah blah, and it like explains the fic a bit further. Or some people like to do like just a plain summary, which is just like the basic idea of the fic. Some people like to write a completely summary that just has like, it's not actual text from the fic, it just kind of explains what's going on. Summaries can be long, summaries can be short. You do whatever you want to do for the summary. But if you have no idea what to put for the summary, I would say take like an excerpt from early on in the first chapter and make that your summary. I'd say no more than like 2 or 3 sentences probably. Then someone who's looking for a fic will get a general idea of what the fic is, and they'll also see a bit of your writing to try and like entice them, I guess. And once you've done all that, you've completed all the boxes in A3, it's finally time to post. But I would not press that post button just yet. I would press the preview button, which saves the fic on AO3, but it's private, only you can see it. It will say at the top when it's scheduled for deletion. I think it's a week. I think you get a week for it being like a draft. But I always do this, like I press preview, I check everything, make sure everything's working, and then I just press post. Because once I've checked everything, I know it's good. And by checking things, I mean like checking my like italicized font has transferred over from the doc I've written on, checking that I've got like the right spacing between every line, that kind of thing. So once you've checked your preview, you can then press the post button. And once you press post, at least for me, I want to like obsessively check the fic every single minute. But my recommendation is actually don't do that. If you have like other social media that you want to post about the fic on, I like go and do that, post links, post like little screenshots of the tags and stuff. For my buddy one shots, I typically post them on TikTok and on Twitter. For my upstairs stuff, I don't post that anywhere, but that's mainly because on Twitter I'm only talking about 911, so why would I post for a different fandom, if that makes sense? Maybe you also want to like send it to a friend that you have who's been like wanting to read it as soon as you post it. But once you've done that, close the tab that your fanfic is open in and go and do something else. Go and watch TV, read a different fanfic, watch a YouTube video. Literally do anything else apart from obsessively check it, because then your brain is just tracking the stats, and that's not what you want with fanfiction. With fanfics, the actual like thing you care about is writing it and being creative, and if you get obsessive about checking the stats, then your brain can think, oh, maybe I should just write stuff that people will like, not what I enjoy writing, which is not the point of fanfiction. The last thing you want is for your brain to think that you're not a good writer because you're not getting any hits or kudos in like the first hour. Like, just don't look at that. Completely ignore it. push it out of your mind. The rule I try to stick to personally is I won't check for an hour after it's posted, but that also does depend on what I'm posting. So for things like a one shot, like anyone can see that as soon as they search for that ship or that fandom or whatever. But for multiple chapter fanfics, if someone is subscribed to your fic, they will not get the email as soon as you post a new chapter. For example, there's people I'm subscribed to where I see on like Twitter that they've posted a new chapter and I don't get the email for another hour. And for multiple chapter fics, people will be waiting for the next chapter. You just got to wait for them to get the email, read the email, and then start reading the new chapter. Also, you've got to account for time zones, especially if it's like a fandom which is heavily in one country. As someone who is British, I had this problem a lot with my long fanfic. I would post new chapters usually between 9 and 10 p.m. UK time, and then by the time I was going to sleep, like just after midnight, there hasn't been too many new hits or too many new kudos or anything. But then when I wake up the next morning after all the Americans have woken up and have seen the email and read the new chapter, it's gone way up in hits and kudos. And like, you just got to account for time zones in those kind of situations. Also, people might just be at work or at school or doing something else when you post a new chapter and they've got to wait till they're free to read it. So like, just give it some time. Don't even worry about it. If you can stop yourself from checking it, I would say wait a full 24 hours from posting to when you first check the stats. I know that's really hard. If you can wait a full 24 hours and just like rely on the emails you get from AO3 about like kudos and comments and stuff, go for it. I personally can't do that. Typically I post though just before I go to bed. I typically post in the evenings. So I'll check it just before I go to sleep, and then I check it again as soon as I wake up, which is usually about 12 hours after I've posted the fanfic. My like AO3 you've got kudos email comes through usually about midday. So then I see like the total number of kudos, but obviously that's only in like the last 24 hours. So like if you get some on that fic after that time, they will be counted in the next day's email, if that makes sense. What I'm trying to say is don't check it too often. Don't get super obsessed with the stats. They don't matter really. What matters is that you love what you've created. That's the real thing that matters with fanfiction. And once you have like checked the stats on the fanfic, go to the statistics tab on AO3. This shows statistics like subscriptions on your fic, which don't show up on like the main fic page, and also includes private bookmarks, which don't show up on the main fic page. So like for Intertwined, which I know I keep yapping about my own fanfic, but it's like the only thing I have that's longer than like 5 chapters. So make sure you check that, because it makes you feel really good that there's actually more than you thought there was. It makes your brain happy, okay? And then the last thing, it only applies if you're doing a multiple chapter fanfic, which is keep writing, which sometimes is the hardest thing to do, honestly. What I found with my long fic is somewhere in the middle, I started losing some motivation. When I got to like the points where I was like, I don't really know what to do next, I'm kind of losing motivation, but I pushed through, I got out the other side. You will get out the other side, I promise. And now I'm sat here with like an 120,000 word fic to my name, which is genuinely insane to me. And I'm already planning my next long fic, which is again Upstead. For some reason I can only write buddy one shots and Upstead long fics. I don't know why, although I have now written an Upstead one shot as well. But yeah, I think that's all of my little tips and tricks. So hopefully you now know all the answers to your dumb questions about how the fanfiction writing process kind of works. If you have any other questions, leave them in the comments down below. I'll reply if I know the answer. If I don't, I'm sure someone else will probably know the answer. And also if you want me to do any other videos like about fanfiction, about the writing process, about reading fanfiction, literally anything to do with fanfiction, leave them in the comments. I'll probably do them. And now I have to do the awkward and kind of cringy YouTuber thing and ask you to maybe like the video or even subscribe if you enjoyed it. I post a bunch of videos all about fanfiction and TV shows and all that kind of fandom culture-y stuff. So if you enjoy that kind of thing, you might like what I do here. And in the description there'll be links to my AO3 profile if you want to read any of the fanfics I've yapped about today. There'll also be a link to my Twitter account where I mostly talk about 911. I'm not giving you the lie, it's almost all 911 at this point. And also links to my TikTok account where I post new fanfiction related TikToks literally every single day. So that's something you might like. You might want to follow me over there. So yeah, I've been Claudia. I hope you enjoyed the video and I'll hopefully see you all soon. Bye!